Hello, David. I'm really happy to have this conversation with you today. English is a very popular language around the world, and many people want to learn it. However, I often meet people who say, I want to learn English, but I don't know where to start. To be honest, I have felt the same way many times. There are so many resources available that it can be confusing.
Hello, Amina. I'm happy to be here too. You're right. Many learners think that starting English is difficult because they see thousands of books, websites, videos, and courses. They spend a lot of time searching for the perfect method. But in reality, learning English becomes much easier when we focus on simple habits instead of perfect plans.
That's an interesting idea. I remember downloading several language learning apps. I also bought notebooks and saved many English learning videos. I felt motivated at first, but after a while, I became overwhelmed because I didn't know what to study first.
That happens very often. Many learners prepare for learning instead of actually learning. They collect resources, organize materials, and make complicated schedules. But language learning is a skill, and skills improve through practice. The most important thing is to start using English every day, even if only for a short time.
I think many beginners believe they need to study for several hours every day.
Yes, and that belief can create unnecessary pressure. Imagine someone who has never exercised before. If they suddenly decide to train for 3 hours every day, they will probably become tired and quit. Language learning works in a similar way. Small, daily efforts are often more effective than long study sessions that happen only occasionally.
So, what would you recommend to someone who is completely new to English?
I would recommend starting with a very simple routine. Learn a few useful words every day, listen to short English audio, read simple sentences. The goal is not to learn everything immediately. The goal is to create a habit.
I like the word habit. It sounds more realistic than trying to become fluent quickly.
Exactly. Many people focus too much on the final destination and forget about the daily journey. Fluency is built step by step. Every new word, every sentence, and every minute of listening contributes to progress.
I remember one period when I studied English for only 15 minutes each day. At first, I thought it wasn't enough, but after a month, I realized that I had learned many new words and expressions.
That's a great example. 15 minutes every day equals more than 7 hours of study in a month. Consistency creates results that are not always visible immediately. Many learners quit because they expect rapid improvement. They don't realize that language learning is a gradual process.
Another challenge is confidence. Many people are afraid of making mistakes.
That's one of the biggest challenges. Some learners stay silent because they want every sentence to be perfect. Unfortunately, perfection is impossible when learning a new language. Mistakes are a natural part of the process.
I still remember some embarrassing mistakes I made when speaking English. At the time, I felt uncomfortable, but now I laugh when I think about them.
And those mistakes probably helped you improve. Every mistake teaches us something. Children learn their first language by making thousands of mistakes. Adults often forget that language learning should be a process of experimentation.
That's true. Children don't stop speaking because they make mistakes.
Exactly. They keep trying. They listen, repeat, and gradually improve. English learners can learn a lot from that attitude. Instead of fearing mistakes, they should view mistakes as signs of growth.
Sometimes learners compare themselves with people who speak English fluently. That can be discouraging.
Yes, comparison often creates frustration. A beginner should not compare themselves with someone who has studied English for 10 years. A better comparison is with your own past self. Ask yourself, can I understand more today than I could last month? If the answer is yes, then you are moving forward.
That's a healthy way to think about progress. It helps learners focus on improvement rather than perfection.
Absolutely. Another helpful idea is to make English part of your daily life. Many learners believe that studying only happens at a desk with a textbook, but English can be everywhere.
What do you mean by that?
For example, you can change your phone language to English. You can listen to English music while traveling. You can watch short videos in English. You can read simple articles about topics you enjoy. When English becomes part of your daily routine, learning feels more natural.
I like that approach because it doesn't feel like extra work. It feels like adding English to activities that we already do.
Exactly. If you enjoy sports, read about sports in English. If you enjoy cooking, watch cooking videos in English. If you enjoy technology, follow technology channels in English. Learning becomes easier when it is connected to your interests.
That's a very important point. Sometimes people choose materials that are too difficult or too boring. then they lose motivation.
Motivation grows when learners understand and enjoy what they are studying. Beginners do not need difficult novels or advanced academic articles. Simple content that is interesting and understandable is often much more effective.
So if someone is beginning today, they don't need a perfect plan. They don't need to study all day. They don't need to speak perfectly.
Exactly. They simply need to begin with small, consistent actions. Learn a little every day, listen regularly, accept mistakes, and enjoy the process. Those simple habits can build a strong foundation for long-term success.
I think that's a wonderful message. Learning English doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes the simplest approach is the most effective.
I completely agree. The learners who succeed are often not the most talented. They're the ones who continue practicing, even when progress feels slow. Over time, those small efforts become something much bigger.
That's a great thought. The journey starts with a single step, and every small step matters.
Exactly. And when learners understand that, they stop worrying about being perfect and start focusing on becoming better, little by little, every day.
David, I have another question that many English learners ask. When someone starts learning English, there are so many things to study. There is grammar, vocabulary, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Some learners feel confused because they don't know which skill they should focus on first. What do you think about that?
That's a very common question. In my opinion, beginners should not try to master everything at the same time. Instead, they should build a strong foundation. The first thing I usually recommend is learning useful vocabulary and improving listening skills. These two areas can help learners understand English more naturally.
That's interesting. Many people think grammar should be the first priority.
Grammar is important, but vocabulary is often more important in the beginning. Imagine that you know every grammar rule, but you don't know the words people are using. It would be very difficult to understand conversations. On the other hand, if you know many useful words, you can often understand the main idea even if your grammar is not perfect.
That makes sense. When I listen to English, the words I know help me understand the topic, even when I don't understand every sentence.
Exactly. That's why beginners should focus on learning practical vocabulary. Instead of memorizing long lists of rare words, they should learn words that they can use every day.
Can you give some examples?
Of course, words related to daily life are very useful. For example, family, food, work, school, time, travel, shopping, health, and hobbies. Learners use these topics frequently in conversations, so the vocabulary becomes useful immediately.
I think many learners make the mistake of trying to learn too many words at once.
Yes, that's true. Some people try to memorize 50 or 100 words every day. A few days later, they forget most of them. Learning 5 to 10 useful words and reviewing them regularly is often much more effective.
I have noticed that I remember words better when I see them several times in different situations.
That's because repetition is very important. Our brains need multiple encounters with a word before it becomes a permanent memory. If you learn a new word today, then hear it tomorrow, read it next week, and use it in a sentence later, you are much more likely to remember it.
So vocabulary is one important area. What about listening?
Listening is extremely important because it helps learners become familiar with the sounds and rhythm of English. Many beginners can read simple English, but they struggle when native speakers talk because spoken English sounds different from written English.
I experienced that myself. Sometimes I could read a sentence and understand it easily, but when I heard the same sentence in a conversation, it felt completely different.
That's a very common experience. Native speakers often speak quickly, connect words together, and use natural pronunciation. Listening practice helps learners become comfortable with these patterns.
What type of listening material is best for beginners?
Beginners should choose material that is easy enough to understand. If a learner understands almost nothing, they may become frustrated. It's better to listen to slow and clear English first. Short podcasts, beginner videos, and simple conversations are excellent choices.
Should learners listen only once?
Not necessarily. Repeating the same audio can be very helpful. The first time you may understand only a little. The second time you notice more details. The third time you may understand most of it. Repetition strengthens both vocabulary and listening skills.
That's encouraging because many learners think they must always find new material.
New material is useful, but repeating familiar material is valuable too. Think about your favorite song. After hearing it many times, you remember the lyrics naturally. Language learning often works in a similar way.
Another thing I often hear is that learners want to speak immediately. Is that a good idea?
Yes, but they should not put too much pressure on themselves. Speaking is important, but beginners don't need long, advanced conversations. They can start with simple sentences about themselves.
Such as introducing themselves?
Exactly. They can talk about their name, family, job, hobbies, daily routine, or future goals. These topics use common vocabulary and help learners gain confidence.
Confidence seems to be a key factor in language learning.
It certainly is. Many learners know more English than they think, but fear prevents them from speaking. The more they practice simple conversations, the more comfortable they become.
I remember practicing short self-introductions repeatedly. At first, I felt nervous. Later, it became easy because I had said those sentences many times.
That's an excellent example. Repetition builds confidence. When learners become comfortable with simple topics, they can gradually move to more complex discussions.
What about reading? Should beginners read every day?
Yes, even a few minutes of reading can help. Reading exposes learners to vocabulary, sentence patterns, and grammar naturally. The key is choosing material that matches their level.
Sometimes beginners try to read difficult books because they think difficult material will help them improve faster.
That's a common mistake. If every page contains dozens of unknown words, reading becomes exhausting. It's usually better to read something slightly challenging but mostly understandable.
That sounds much more enjoyable.
Learning should be challenging enough to create growth, but not so difficult that learners lose motivation. Finding that balance is very important.
So, if we think about building a strong foundation, learners should focus on useful vocabulary, regular listening, simple speaking practice, and easy reading materials.
Exactly. Those habits work together. Vocabulary helps listening. Listening helps speaking. Reading reinforces vocabulary. Speaking builds confidence. Each skill supports the others.
I like that idea because it shows that learning English is not about mastering one skill alone. Everything is connected.
That's right. Language learning is like building a house. A strong foundation makes everything else easier. When learners develop these basic skills consistently, they prepare themselves for greater success in the future.
David, while we're talking about building a strong foundation, I think motivation is another important topic. Many people start learning English with a lot of excitement. They buy notebooks, download apps, and create study plans. But after a few weeks, their motivation begins to disappear. Why do you think that happens?
That's a great question. I think one reason is that many learners expect fast results. They imagine that after a few weeks of study, they will understand movies, speak fluently, and communicate easily. When those things don't happen immediately, they feel disappointed.
Yes, I can understand that. Sometimes people work hard for a month and then think, why am I still making mistakes? They forget how big the learning process really is.
Exactly. Learning a language is a long-term project. It's more like growing a tree than building a wall. When you build a wall, you can see progress very quickly. But when you plant a tree, much of the growth happens slowly. Every day matters, even when you cannot immediately see the results.
I really like that comparison. It reminds learners to be patient with themselves.
Patience is extremely important. Another reason motivation disappears is that people often make their study routines too difficult. They create schedules that are impossible to maintain.
I remember doing that. I once promised myself that I would study English for 2 hours every day. The plan sounded wonderful, but after a busy week, I couldn't follow it anymore.
That's a perfect example. A study plan should fit your real life, not your ideal life. If someone can realistically study 20 minutes a day, then 20 minutes is a good plan.
So consistency is more important than intensity?
In most cases, yes. Imagine two learners. One studies 3 hours in a single day and then stops for a week. The other studies 20 minutes every day. After several months, the second learner will often make better progress because of consistency.
That's encouraging because many people have busy schedules. They may think they don't have enough time to learn English.
Exactly. Even small periods of study can be useful. 5 minutes while waiting for a bus, 10 minutes during a break, 15 minutes before sleeping. These small moments can add up over time.
Another thing I've noticed is that some learners become bored. They study grammar rules every day and eventually lose interest.
That's a very important point. Enjoyment plays a major role in language learning. If learners only study materials they dislike, staying motivated becomes difficult.
So how can learners make English more enjoyable?
One simple method is to connect English with personal interests. For example, if someone enjoys football, they can watch football interviews in English. If they enjoy cooking, they can follow cooking channels in English. If they enjoy travel, they can read travel blogs in English.
That sounds much more interesting than studying random topics.
Absolutely. People learn more effectively when they are curious about the content. Interest creates attention, and attention helps memory.
I've experienced that myself. When I read about a topic I love, I often learn new words without even trying.
That's because your brain is focused on understanding the message. Vocabulary becomes part of the experience instead of feeling like a separate task.
What about goals? Do goals help maintain motivation?
Yes, but goals should be realistic and specific. Many learners have goals like, I want to speak English fluently. That's a good dream, but it's very broad.
What would be a better goal?
A better goal might be, I will learn 10 new words this week, or I will listen to English for 15 minutes every day this month. These goals are clear and measurable.
I think small goals also create a sense of achievement.
Exactly. Every time learners reach a goal, they feel successful. That success encourages them to continue.
Sometimes learners focus so much on what they don't know that they forget how much they have already learned.
That's very true. Keeping track of progress can be motivating. For example, learners can keep a notebook where they write new words, useful expressions, or short sentences they have mastered.
Then they can look back and see their improvement.
Yes, after a few months, they may realize they know hundreds of words that were once completely unfamiliar. Seeing progress makes the journey feel more rewarding.
Another challenge is making mistakes. Even when learners understand that mistakes are normal, mistakes can still feel frustrating.
That's natural. Nobody enjoys making mistakes. However, successful learners view mistakes differently. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, they see them as information.
Information?
Exactly. A mistake tells you what you need to practice. If you use the wrong tense, you've identified an area for improvement. If you forget a word, you've discovered vocabulary that needs more attention.
That's a very positive way to look at it.
And it's practical. Every mistake becomes an opportunity to learn something new.
I've also noticed that learners sometimes compare their worst moments to other people's best moments.
That's a wonderful observation. Someone may watch a fluent speaker online and think, I'll never be that good. But they don't see the years of practice behind that fluency.
They only see the final result.
Exactly. Every fluent speaker was once a beginner who struggled with vocabulary, pronunciation, and confidence. Progress takes time for everyone.
So staying motivated isn't really about feeling excited every day.
Not necessarily. Motivation is helpful, but habits are even more powerful. There will be days when learners feel excited and days when they don't. Good habits keep them moving forward regardless of how they feel.
That's an important lesson. If someone waits for motivation before studying, they may not study very often.
Exactly. Successful learners create routines that continue even when motivation is low. They study because it has become part of their daily life.
I think that's one of the biggest secrets of language learning. Progress doesn't come from one amazing day of study. It comes from many ordinary days of consistent practice.
I couldn't agree more. Small actions repeated over weeks, months, and years can create remarkable results. The key is to keep moving forward, even if the steps seem small.
David, we've talked about vocabulary, listening, reading, speaking, motivation, and consistency. Now I'd like to discuss something that many learners worry about: grammar. Whenever people start learning English, they often ask, how much grammar do I need? Some learners spend hours studying grammar rules, while others try to avoid grammar completely. What is the best approach?
That's a very important topic. In my opinion, grammar is essential, but it should be learned in a balanced way. Some learners focus so much on grammar that they never practice real communication. Others ignore grammar completely and struggle to express themselves clearly. The best approach is somewhere in the middle.
I think many beginners become afraid of grammar because there are so many rules.
That's true. When learners open a grammar book, they often see many tenses, structures, and exceptions. It can feel overwhelming. But the good news is that beginners do not need to learn every grammar rule immediately.
That sounds reassuring. Sometimes learners think they must master all the grammar before they can start speaking.
And that's one of the biggest misunderstandings. If someone waits until their grammar is perfect, they may never start speaking. Communication should begin early, even with simple grammar.
So, what grammar topics should beginners focus on first?
I usually recommend starting with the most useful structures. For example, simple present tense, basic past tense, common question forms, and everyday sentence patterns. These allow learners to talk about themselves, their routines, their experiences, and their plans.
That makes sense because those are topics people discuss regularly.
Exactly. Language learning becomes easier when grammar has a practical purpose. Instead of memorizing rules without context, learners should see how grammar helps them communicate real ideas.
I remember learning grammar rules in isolation. Sometimes I understood the rule, but I didn't know how to use it in conversation.
That's a common experience. Grammar becomes much more useful when it is connected to real examples. For instance, instead of studying a tense for hours, learners can practice it through meaningful sentences about their own lives.
Could you give an example?
Of course. If someone is learning the simple present tense, they can say, I wake up at 7 o'clock, I drink tea in the morning, or I study English every evening. These sentences are practical and easy to remember because they describe real habits.
I like that idea because it turns grammar into communication rather than memorization.
Exactly. Language exists for communication. Grammar is a tool that helps us organize our ideas clearly.
Another thing learners often worry about is pronunciation. Many people feel nervous because they think their accent is not good enough.
That's another common concern. First, learners should understand that having an accent is completely normal. Almost everyone who learns a second language has some degree of accent.
That's true. People from different countries naturally sound different.
Exactly. The goal is not to sound exactly like a native speaker. The goal is to be understood clearly. Clear communication is much more important than having a perfect accent.
I think that idea can help many learners feel more confident.
I hope so. Sometimes learners become so worried about pronunciation that they avoid speaking altogether. But pronunciation improves through practice, listening, and repetition.
What are some practical ways to improve pronunciation?
One effective method is shadowing. This means listening to a native speaker or a fluent speaker and immediately repeating what you hear. You try to copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation as closely as possible.
That sounds challenging but useful.
It can feel difficult at first, but it becomes easier with practice. Learners can start with short sentences and gradually move to longer conversations.
I have also heard that reading aloud can help.
Absolutely. Reading aloud gives learners an opportunity to practice speaking even when they don't have a conversation partner. It helps build confidence and improves familiarity with English sounds.
Sometimes learners feel embarrassed speaking to themselves.
That's understandable, but speaking to yourself can actually be a very effective exercise. You can describe your day, talk about your plans, or explain what you're doing. The important thing is to get comfortable producing English regularly.
Another challenge is understanding different accents. Learners often become comfortable with one accent and then struggle when they hear another.
That's completely normal. English is spoken around the world by people from many different backgrounds. Exposure to different accents can help learners become more flexible listeners.
So learners shouldn't panic if they don't understand every accent immediately.
Exactly. Understanding different accents is a skill that develops over time. The more listening experience learners have, the easier it becomes.
Let's talk about confidence again. Sometimes learners know the grammar, know the vocabulary, and understand the conversation, but they still hesitate to speak.
That's because confidence often grows through action, not before action. Many people think they need confidence first and then they will speak. In reality, speaking is what gradually creates confidence.
That's an interesting way to think about it.
Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. You don't become confident before getting on the bicycle. You become confident after practicing repeatedly. Speaking English works the same way.
So confidence is built through experience.
Exactly. Every conversation, every sentence, and every attempt helps learners become more comfortable.
I think many learners will find that encouraging. They don't need to wait until they feel completely ready.
That's right. In fact, most learners never feel completely ready. They improve because they continue practicing despite uncertainty.
The more we discuss these topics, the more I realize that successful language learning is not about perfection. It's about progress, practice, and patience.
I completely agree. Learners often underestimate what they can achieve through steady effort. They focus on what they cannot do yet instead of appreciating how far they have already come.
And every skill seems to improve when learners keep showing up consistently.
Exactly. Whether it's grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, listening, or speaking, regular practice is what turns knowledge into ability. Over time, those small daily efforts begin to feel natural, and English becomes a comfortable part of life.
David, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about something important. Many learners begin their English journey with enthusiasm, but they often wonder what successful learners do differently. When you look at people who eventually become confident English speakers, what habits do they usually have?
That's a wonderful question. After teaching many learners over the years, I've noticed that successful learners are not always the smartest or the most talented. In fact, many of them are very ordinary people. What makes them different is their consistency. They keep learning even when progress feels slow.
That's interesting, because many people assume successful learners have some special ability.
Some may have natural advantages, but consistency is usually much more important. Successful learners understand that improvement happens gradually. They don't expect miracles after a few weeks of study. Instead, they focus on showing up every day.
I think that's a powerful lesson. Sometimes we underestimate the value of small daily actions.
Exactly. Imagine learning 5 new words every day. 5 words may not sound impressive, but after a month, that's about 150 words. After a year, it's thousands of words. Small efforts can produce surprisingly large results.
Another thing I've noticed is that successful learners seem less afraid of making mistakes.
That's very true. They understand that mistakes are part of the process. Instead of feeling embarrassed, they treat mistakes as opportunities to learn. Every mistake provides feedback.
I remember a time when I was afraid to speak because I didn't want to sound foolish. Looking back, that fear actually slowed my progress.
Many learners experience that. Fear often becomes a bigger obstacle than grammar or vocabulary. When learners stop worrying about being perfect, they usually improve much faster.
So confidence grows through practice rather than waiting for perfection.
Exactly. Confidence is built sentence by sentence, conversation by conversation. Every time a learner speaks, they gain experience. Every experience makes the next conversation a little easier.
Let's imagine someone listening to us right now. Perhaps they are a beginner. Maybe they have been studying English for only a few weeks. What practical advice would you give them today?
I would tell them to keep things simple. Start with realistic goals. Learn useful vocabulary. Listen to English regularly. Read materials that match your level. Practice speaking whenever possible. Most importantly, don't quit because progress seems slow.
That's excellent advice. Sometimes people stop learning because they think they are not improving, even when they actually are.
Exactly. Progress is not always obvious from day to day. Language learning often feels slow when you're living through it. But if you compare your current ability with where you were 6 months ago, you'll often see significant improvement.
I think many learners forget to celebrate their progress.
That's true. They focus only on what they still cannot do. But it's important to recognize achievements. Maybe you can understand a podcast that seemed impossible before. Maybe you can introduce yourself confidently. Maybe you can read a simple article without using a dictionary every minute. These are real accomplishments.
Celebrating small victories probably helps maintain motivation.
Absolutely. Success creates momentum. When learners recognize their progress, they feel encouraged to continue.
Another thing I appreciate about language learning is that there isn't only one correct path. Different people learn in different ways.
That's a great point. Some learners enjoy reading, others prefer listening. Some learn best through conversation, others benefit from writing. The key is finding methods that fit your personality and lifestyle.
So learners shouldn't worry if their approach looks different from someone else's.
Exactly. What matters is whether the method helps you stay engaged and continue learning. Consistency is much more important than copying another person's routine perfectly.
If you could summarize everything we've discussed into a few important principles, what would they be?
I would say this: start small, be consistent, learn useful vocabulary, listen regularly, practice speaking without fear, accept mistakes, choose materials you enjoy, be patient with yourself, and remember that fluency is built through daily effort, not overnight success.
That's a wonderful summary. It sounds simple, but those principles can make a huge difference.
They really can. Many learners search for secret techniques or shortcuts, but the truth is that steady practice remains one of the most powerful tools for learning any language.
I think that's a message worth remembering. Learning English doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require extraordinary talent. It requires commitment, patience, and a willingness to keep moving forward.
I couldn't agree more. Every fluent speaker started as a beginner. Every confident speaker once struggled to form simple sentences. The difference is that they continued learning.
And perhaps that's the most encouraging idea of all. No matter where a learner is today, they can improve tomorrow if they continue practicing.
Exactly. Every day is another opportunity to learn a new word, understand a new phrase, or have a new conversation. Those small moments create long-term success.
Thank you, David. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I think our listeners have learned many practical ideas that they can start using immediately.
Thank you, Amina. I've enjoyed it as well. Learning English is a journey, and every learner should remember that progress is possible. With patience, consistency, and effort, remarkable improvement can happen over time.
That's a perfect note to end on. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in your ability to improve. Every step forward matters, no matter how small it may seem.
Absolutely. One small step today can become a great achievement in the future. The important thing is to keep going and enjoy the journey of learning English.